Hello, Magic Muse. Welcome back to As Above, So Below. This is a space for all witches, heathens, and all of my magical folk. So today we're going to be chatting about how witchcraft helps you reclaim and step into your power. And this also involves shadow work. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about my journey. And if you've been following the series, you kind of have a foundation of what that looks like. But I haven't gone in detail about the shadow work aspect of it. So we have a few new people here. So for those of you who don't know, I started my path back in 2016. I've been a practicing witch for about 10 years now, and now I am doing professional psychic work for people. And I was raised Mormon, so I did not know that this path was actually something that you can traverse down. And I always knew that I was different, but I didn't know what that meant. You know, I remember having thoughts when I was younger about, just feeling different. And then I also remember when I was probably about 6, I was thinking about what happens when we die. Kind of interesting thoughts for a 6-year-old to be talking about or thinking about. And it wasn't until 2016 when I actually read the To Ride a Silver Broomstick by Silver Raven Wolf book. That was really when my whole life changed. And so being raised Mormon, I was raised to be quiet, to be humble, to, really don't talk back. I was a pretty rebellious child. I'm the eldest child. I am a stepchild, and I was raised by 2 pretty narcissistic fathers. So, of course, I was always in trouble. I was always grounded. It seemed like I was always in trouble for something. So I went through my childhood dissociating, and I was in a lot of depression and anxiety. Fast forward to 2010 when I actually moved out to South Carolina, because I'm originally from Washington State. I started to reclaim my independence and my life. And I read this book, and everything to a T described me. And in the last video, I talked about how I said to Spirit or whoever was up there, I was like, if I'm a witch and on Rivers Avenue, there's about 4 traffic lights and it's a very busy road here in South Carolina. I said, if I'm a witch, turn all of these lights green. Sure enough, all of them turned green on my way to work, and I just shot down the highway, and I was like, holy crap, this is intense. So I started to work with that. I started to work with manifestation magic. I started to work with candle magic, herbs, moon magic, all the things. And I started to notice that a lot of things were changing in my world. And it was because things were changing inside of me. And I started to not tolerate things in the way that I used to. I outgrew friends. I did not put up with certain comments from family members. I started to reclaim my power. And even though a lot of people didn't understand or had judgment about it, I knew in my heart that I wasn't doing anything wrong. And it's the ignorance that people have to judge. So that gave me a lot of confidence, and also it gives me a little fire in my belly when I do something differently, when I don't go with, I've never been somebody who goes with the grain. I have always been very much like, if there's a show that's coming out, like for example, Game of Thrones. I didn't watch Game of Thrones probably until years after it came out, because I was like, everybody's obsessed with the show. Like, I'm not gonna do that, So I've always had kind of this like black sheep, and I'm gonna do my own thing. I have a stellium in Aquarius, so but it gave me more confidence to walk my talk. And if people come at me with judgment, I just, say what I feel. And what I love about this path is that witchcraft does not omit. It is not saying that it is the only way. It is very much like there's so many different people with so many different paths and so many different beliefs. Let's come together and learn and celebrate. And of course, there's weird people out there who don't believe in, inclusivity, all that stuff. But for the most part, I have met amazing people in the witchcraft and pagan community. And it has really helped open my eyes to how much is really out there. And I always had this feeling and this wonder, in particular with monotheistic religion. If somebody grew up in, say, India, and they, have always known and practiced Buddhism or Hinduism, more Hinduism, but then somebody comes and is trying to talk about, Christianity and, saying that this is the only way. So you're saying that that person who has never been exposed to Christianity or your monotheistic religion is going to go to your quote unquote hell because they don't know that. These are thoughts that I've always had. And that was when I started to slice away a lot of the things. Being raised in the Mormon church, my grandfather was a bishop. I did baptisms for the dead. There was a lot, and my mother is still Mormon to this day. But I really had to break out of that cycle and break out of conditioning. And even just that showed me how strong I really am. And instead of looking at my past and, saying, woe is me, I was raised as this, this, and this, I now use that knowledge and that power to project me forward into where exactly I want to be. So now I am really putting myself out there for others to be comfortable walking this walk. And I had to do a lot of shadow work for that. I had to sit with myself in, the feelings of inadequacy, imposter syndrome, fear of being seen and persecuted, fear of being heard. I've had a lot of throat chakra suppression in my life. My dog's coming through. So it takes a lot of willpower to choose a different route, but moving forward, the goddess or your deity's spirit will give you the power to move forward in a empowered way, in an empowered life. And I no longer, my rituals used to be very elaborate. They used to be like, I have to time it this way, I have to do it like this, I have to be here on a Saturday, like all of these things. But now I'm very intuitive. I am like, if I feel as though I need to do something for a certain moon, I'm going to work what I'm feeling on this certain moon instead of doing something because, a moon is coming around and everybody else is doing it. I don't do that anymore. I feel into if there's something resonating with me about a specific moon cycle, about, some sort of eclipse or astrology event, I will move into that. But I don't sit and wait for the perfect timing anymore. If I can, yes, I will do that. But I trust my intuition and myself more than any outside influence now. I don't really go for readings anymore. I do my own readings. I am, of course, in counseling and I do hypnotherapy and all that stuff, but it brings the power back to me. And that's how I've felt more empowerment in witchcraft than in any sort of other path. It forces you to face your shadow. And I remember when I was initiated into my path, I had this unprovoked shamanic journey. Like there was a meditation being read and my soul went in a totally different route. And I remember transforming into, you know, a dragonfly, and then I transformed into a jellyfish, and then I saw this bear, and this bear like ran away, and then the scene shifted again and it panned out and I was running on this limb. And then the scene shifted again and I just saw these bright green eyes right in front of me. And then it panned out even more and I was a black jaguar. And now I have the jaguar tattooed on me. It was the most painful tattoo I've ever gotten, but it is the most beautiful and I love it. But jaguars, specifically black jaguars, and I'm not saying panther because there's technically not a species of panther. They are melanistic jaguars. But they are all about shadow work. They are about lunar forces. They are about, you know, and their jaws are so big and dense and they're great swimmers. But a lot of it has to do with throat, with reclaiming your power with the throat. And black is actually a power color. So it's so interesting how all of this has come through, and the black jaguar represents the triple goddess. And it just, all of it just started clicking. And as soon as I just let my soul go and remember my power and why I came here, that is when everything started to shift for me. And I don't shy away from the word witch. I reclaim it because in past lives I have died because I was practicing midwifery or I was practicing divination, you know. But in this life, I am here to reclaim it 100% because I am more safe. Well, that's to be argued, but I can practice now and, you know, not be hopefully hung again or burned. So I hope that that gives you some encouragement on your path and to not shy away from shadow work, because I feel as though witchcraft is, it encompasses the whole. And, you know, you can't have light without shadow. And I think that that's also something that a lot of people don't talk about, is the beauty in the shadow, the beauty in the darkness. And there's things that you can see in the dark that you can't see in the light, like bioluminescence. You know, it's I've never had a path that encompasses all of that. And I find so much power in encompassing the light and the shadow, and that's exactly what witchcraft does. So if you have any questions or any thoughts, comments, put them down in the comments. We're really here to build a community and to, you know, talk about our paths and to be safe with being ourselves and safe with reclaiming that word, because this is a very powerful, my ear is ringing, it's a very powerful path, and it asks you to face your fears. And I think that that's one of my favorite parts about it. So thank you all for being here. If you would like any tarot readings, hypnotherapy, Reiki, anything like that, link for it is in the description box below. But thank you so much, muses. I will see you on the next one. Blessed be. Bye.